WATD presents John Paul, the Car Doctor. All things automotive. Have questions? Call or text 781-837-4900. Now, here's John Paul, the Car Doctor.
And good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD, where some people say it's Jesse's favorite show on Sundays between 11 and 12.
That's right. Top
be
three
the only
easily.
show between 11 and 12. But I won't look at that negatively. I'll be positive. I'll be Mr. Glasses half full, just because. Hey, do you work on your own car? Do you use a scan tool? Do you use a code reader? Well, with us is Keith Anderson from Innova. Keith, good morning and welcome to the Car Doctor program. And first off, did I pronounce your last name anywhere near correctly?
Close enough.
Close.
Andreessen.
Andreessen. And because everybody likes to make sure their name is pronounced correctly, so we'll kind of move off from there. Tell us a little bit. First off, how long have you been in Innova, and what did you do? What did you do to get there, and what do you do while you're there?
Well, let me tell you, 47 years in the automotive industry. I've been 29 years with Innova Electronics. I'm OBD Tool Product Manager today. I'm ASE Certified Advanced Level Master Tech, and I hold multiple certifications, including Smog Check Inspector, Repair Tech, and Certified Instructor for the state of California. I'm also sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also an instructor at Santa Ana College, where I teach the next generation of technicians, and I pass my legacy in both classroom theory and real world.
And the first, let's go back to teaching the next generation of technicians. Are you finding looks like there's going to be enough technicians to take over from? I think I heard something like for every 5 technicians that are leaving the industry, only 3 are replacing them. Are you finding that there is maybe more of an interest now in automotive repair than there was maybe 5 years ago?
I don't know if I would say that, but you're correct about those leaving and those coming in. I think there's an uncertainty of where we're going as far as in the car industry. It's not necessarily 10 years ago the career that a tech would envision. There's an EV and what's next.
Yeah, it really is, and the idea that. And I don't want to disparage anybody's industry, but technicians got to buy a lot of stuff compared to, maybe the plumber or an electrician that doesn't spend tens of thousands of dollars on tools.
Yeah, today a digital multimeter that can manage and do diagnostics on EV. Scan tool, oscilloscopes, these can well over 10,000, and that's not even including the hand tools.
Yeah, and I know in a lot of shops today, maybe especially some of the bigger shops, they will, provide the scan tools and the scopes, but in many cases, the technicians go out and buy their own because they're more comfortable with using their own, and and it's there when they need it rather than have to wait to have it come back. And when you're working in a shop, time is money, and you want to be able to get on to the next job. But when it comes to do-it-yourself repair, some people get a little bit confused between, I went out and bought a $30 code reader. What can I do with that versus what can I do with a scan tool? What are the primary differences between the two?
A code reader is a basic diagnostic device that connects to a vehicle's diagnostic link connector. It's called a DLC, and retrieves diagnostic trouble codes. Some people actually refer to that DLC as the OBD2 port. These codes give generic descriptions, and that's about it. From there, you need to go to the service manual and follow the trouble tree. Whereas a scan tool, on the other hand, is far more advanced. It pulls not only OBD2 and manufacturer information, you can look at live data stream in bidirectional controls, system tests, and some of them module programming.
And with the scan tool, sometimes I think, you might use a scan tool and run look at all the various codes and problems, but then look at the original equipment or I guess looking at the difference between the generic codes and the manufacturer specific codes. Is it sometimes possible to get too far down the rabbit hole because you have too much information?
Yeah, I think so. And this is partly what has made our tools successful, is that we've included diagnostic strategies in the form of tips, what most likely is the cause of the problem, and kind of guide the technician or DIY down that road.
Yeah, and you mentioned bidirectional control. What does that really mean? What is having, if you decide you're going to step up to the next level of scan tool, what does a bidirectional scan tool do for you versus a scan tool where maybe you can look at live data, you can look at a little bit more in depth, but what does the bidirectional control really allow you to do?
So after you've retrieved DTCs, you follow a trouble tree. And inside that diagnostic path, there may be, well, okay, let's test that component. A bidirectional control scan tool will allow you to turn on and off, for example, a fan. As we say, the customer's complaint was that it's overheating. So we could turn that on and off to see, is the problem actually at the component level?
So it does help rule that kind of, where prior to this, you were disconnecting the fan, you were trying to find where the connector is, because who knows where, it could be buried under the radiator support or somewhere, and this way you can manually, and like you pointed out, a cooling fan, you can manually turn that cooling fan on and see that it's either going to work or it doesn't, and if you turn it on with the scanner, now all of a sudden you've eliminated a fair amount of, well, is it a wiring problem? Is it the component? And you've simplified, I guess, what can possibly be wrong with it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. There's an input side, which is the sensors, and then there's the output side. So by this kind of functionality, you're able to eliminate all the wires and the component if I ask the ECU or the computer to turn that on. So then we may go look to see what sensors does that computer look at to factor that command to turn on the fan.
Right. And, one of the other things, and I think anyone who's ever read even a basic shop manual, or they go online and they see the initials PIDs, P-I-D. What's a PID?
Yeah, PID stands for Perimeter ID, where for example, our tool can request specific data from a vehicle's computer. Each PID corresponds to a particular piece of information, such as engine RPM, coolant temperature, or fuel system status. These are real-time data points from the car's computer.
And what can you do with that information when you have it?
Well, as I said earlier, you can look to see, it's really a window into that computer, and can you see how that engine or transmission may be operating? So there's values there that are within threshold or out of threshold.
So it's a matter of having that information, being able to see that information, but being able to sort of isolate it and see whether it's within a normal parameter, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, people think about, I get in the car and I turn the car on, and in fact, I just answered a letter from a reader this morning that said they got in the car, they started it up, and the check engine light came on. They went to their local repair shop. Their repair shop did some work and said, yeah, I think you need to have this and this done. 20 minutes later, the check engine light came back on. They went back to the repair shop, and unfortunately, an expression I hear too often, well, drive it for a while. Maybe it needs to relearn things. Now, there is some relearning that takes place, but chances are if the check engine light came on after the repair, it wasn't repaired, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And specifically when you were talking about emissions, these are legislated diagnostics that computer is performing. And when you drive the car, the monitor completes. It's either no DTCs or trouble codes, or it has trouble codes. And yeah, this is most likely not repaired correctly.
Yeah, yeah. We see check engine lights, but also when you get in the car and you start it up, the anti-lock brake lights come on, the airbag or SRS light come on, and if everything's working normally, those lights turn off. But sometimes they don't turn off. Can the Innova scan tools be able to look at those other systems as well?
Yes, and depending on which model of tools, SRS, ABS, and TCM, or transmission control module, are available for DTCs or for codes. And the higher end, we can look at live data and possibly perform those bidirectional controls.
And, I mentioned something about getting kind of dragged down the rabbit hole of information. My wife has a Volkswagen, and I should have called you first probably, but she has a Volkswagen, and one day she got in it and she said, "Oh, the low tire light came on." So I went and checked all the tire pressure and everything looked fine. And it's an indirect style tire pressure monitor system, and I just reset it and it was fine. And a couple days later, she said, "Oh, the tire pressure light came on, but also 2 or 3 other lights came on." I'm like, "Oh, great." And then it's like 4 or 5 lights came on. So I started to look a little bit, and I looked at wiring diagrams and the ABS, the anti-lock brake system, tire pressure monitor system, traction control, steering angle sensor, and airbag system all seem to share the same ground. So I'm like, well, the car sat where it could have gotten wet, maybe a ground went. So I, found all the ground connectors, and interestingly, what it was, driving the car and being able to look at the different things that were going on, I noticed the right front wheel sensor, ABS sensor, would go from 25 miles an hour to 0 every once in a while. So I'm like, oh, well, this could be it. And come to find out, apparently, that wheel sensor, which ended up being bad, also took down the whole network that everything runs on, which sort of surprised me at the same time. So at first I'm like, I don't know if this one ABS sensor, what it has to do with the anti-lock, what it has to do with the airbag system, but when I replaced that wheel sensor, all the lights went out and stayed out.
Wow, that's interesting. Because you did say something early, indirect.
Right.
The heat tire pressure monitoring system absolutely requires that wheel speed sensor. That's how it determines if there's a low tire is by the speed of the tire, a wheel. Yeah. Everything is connected, and when we talk about OEM diagnostics, which is the other computers that are not emission related, they're all passing messages to each other to how to run this vehicle on what is called a CAN bus. So it's a computer-aided network of communication. So if there's a missing message, you turn on all the lights on the dash. It looks like a Christmas tree.
It did, and it wasn't a happy Christmas tree. One of the things that your company has, and you mentioned it right from the very beginning, is the idea that there are 2 different systems depending on what kind of tools you buy: Repair Solutions 2 and Repair Solutions Pro. Can you tell us about the differences in those two and how it helps either the DIYer or the professional come up with a repair?
Yeah, Repair Solutions 2 was the target audience was do-it-yourselfers. And this app is free, and it's for all of the Innova handheld tools. These tools can retrieve codes and give users verified fixes, parts info, labor estimates, and technical service bulletins. We like to think of it as a knowledgeable tech assistant in your pocket. Whereas the Repair Solutions Pro app, that was targeted at a professional technician. So it's a deeper diagnostic approach with detailed reports and shop management tools as well. So it helps professional techs close jobs faster with more confidence. Actually, there's an integration of motor service information inside of our tablets and our Pro Repair Solutions Pro app. And in addition to, it's integrated into the pro.repairsolutions.com website as well, where there's training and tips and this type of information.
And those two are those fee based, or is that something that comes with the scan tool?
They're free. So both apps are free. The motor service information is a subscription, so that has to come with a little bit of a charge, but that's not mandatory. Our repair tips and fixes are free.
Where does Innova get its data? I mean, sometimes you look at some of the stuff and you kind of wonder, are the companies actually buying the data from the vehicle manufacturer? Where does Innova get it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We license our what we call data stream, which means the bits and bytes information from the OEM. For example, I do business with General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and Toyota, and these car makers. And that is in order to properly engage and communicate with the vehicles. We have our shop feedback, and we have in-house engineering. So all of these come together to build our products. It's validated, organized, and turned into actionable repair insights, which you see back on the two apps.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's one of the important things. I remember the first code reader I ever purchased years and years ago, and it was something that I used to keep it in my car. Just, if all of a sudden I'm driving down the road, especially if I'm on some sort of road trip, I would always keep and people thought I was crazy, but I would always keep a code reader in the car just in case a check engine light came on or something came on. I could glance at it and just go, it's an evap code, maybe the gas cap's loose or something, and not be too concerned about it. And those basic code readers, all they really did was kind of display a light, like, everything's good, it's green maybe, and if something's really bad, like an engine misfire, it would turn a red light on. Are we seeing artificial intelligence starting to enter this field where, and I will say that one day I answered a column, and my columns tend to be, say, 10 questions long, and I answered a column and I let one of the AI apps answer all the questions, and it was about 40 to 50% right. And I was like, well, that's not terrible, but are we going to see a day where AI is really going to enter into the world of diagnostics, or is it still going to be people?
It already is. Yeah. To come back to the question you asked about where is this information coming from? So we drive the Fix Finder program and the VeriScan programs at the retailers, and there are millions of scans. This information is processed by AI, and it is managed and put together and presented back inside of our tools using an AI element. So it's here already, and you can't. If you're not looking at AI and using it someplace in your business, at some point here you won't be in this business.
Hmm. And you mentioned Fix Finder. Is that the program that I think it's Advanced or AutoZone uses?
It's an AutoZone program powered by Innova.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I've had people say to me they've gone into the local auto parts store and used that, and I wasn't familiar with it. I'm going to have to go check it out a little bit more.
You should. And there's VeriScan at O'Reilly's as well. And I'm the grandfather of that database and program.
Well, you must be pretty proud of your grandchildren programs.
Yeah.
You mentioned right from the very beginning that OBD or the emissions part of that DLC connector under the dash is mandated, and the government requires that. Do EVs have DLCs?
Yeah. Well, let me give a quick hit. OBD2 has been in the U.S. since 1996. So that's not going away soon for gas and diesel vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So you have some states that are pushing push them out of the market. The EVs are a little bit different. They don't need emission checks, but they will soon have a common diagnostic system like OBD2, but its focus will be on battery health. I mean, that's a whole other radio program to talk about the battery and the recycling of these batteries. The state of California was very concerned about battery systems. So, in fact, in 2026, California has a Advanced Clean Cars 2 coming in where we'll have kind of like a smog check for batteries.
That'd be interesting to see, because I guess you're right. You know, those lithium ion or whatever mixture of chemicals there are in those batteries eventually will need to be recycled. And, you know, and I've certainly read and heard that the EV battery business, recycling business, is a multi-billion-dollar industry, but people just haven't quite figured out how to make it all work yet.
Yeah, we're in the infancy there, but it is a concern for EPA and California Resource Board.
Before we let you go, can you kind of take us through some of the, you know, just quickly touch on some of the basic, you know, tools you have? You mentioned the tablet-style tools. You know, they tend to be a little bit pricey. Is there certain levels that, depending on somebody who's just, you know, looking at their car before they go to have a state vehicle inspection done, or maybe they're a more serious do-it-yourselfer that works on their family's vehicle? Is there kind of a range of what people should consider?
Well, we have products that are, without saying the actual dollar amounts, that are at the very low end are code readers. But all of these tools connect to the RS2 app where you can get a tremendous amount of information. But yeah, all the way up to our flagship tablet, there is a LED that has to do with emissions. So for those programs, in fact, our smart diagnostic systems, our SDS tools, the smog program is actually inside that tool. So those lights, you pick your state, and it helps you determine if you're ready to go to an IM or a smog check. So again, we have Android up at the top end of our tablet, and then our handhelds are just a relatively low price piece that communicates with it.
Yeah, I know. Probably a year or so ago, I had a neighbor who her car wasn't running well, and she had a check engine light on. I went down with my Innova scan tool, and it was just sort of the middle one, and I went down and looked and did a quick check, and I noticed the coolant temperature sensor was reading very low, even though I knew the car had been warmed up and running more than that. So I was pretty convinced it needed a coolant temp sensor, and but I looked at the repair solutions too, and the number one replaced part to cure the problem was in fact a coolant temp sensor.
Yeah, so we're 80-90% accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. So she was bringing it to a local repair shop, and I called him up and I said to him, "Oh, by the way, I'm just a neighbor who lives down the street, and you know I did check this, and I told them what I found, and I said probably a coolant temp sensor, and they said, yeah, we're really jammed up here. We're probably going to need the car for 5 or 6 days before we get to it." And she called me back the next day and said, "Oh, the car's all set." And I said, "Wow, I thought it was going to be 5 or 6 days." And she said, "Yeah, but you diagnosed it before it got there, so they just kind of did a quick check based on what you said, and they were able to just replace the sensor, and things were fine." One of the issues is, and I hear this from professional technicians, shop owners, and even Votech schools. They go out and buy a scan tool, and then a couple of years later, the price of updates kill them. Are Innova tools, can they be updated regularly, and is there a fee behind that?
Yeah, well, there's no fee, and yes, our tools are built to grow with technicians, and hence no fee, but it varies. The low-end tools The only thing that gets updated there is the definitions. As car makers add more definitions, we have to add those. But on the higher end tools, where, like we talked about earlier, there's bidirectional, there's system tests. These are new tests that we have to add into our tools. But regardless, though they're different updates, they are for free.
Oh, that's who doesn't like free? Yeah. And if people want to find out more information, Innova.com, right?
That's correct, and pro.repairsolutions.com.
Perfect. Well, Keith, I want to thank you for taking a little time out of your Sunday, and it's 3 hours earlier. I think you're out in California, so I want to thank you for taking some time out of your early Sunday morning and joining us on the Car Doctor program here out on the East Coast.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. I really appreciate that you having me on your program, and hello to all your listeners.
Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the weekend. Why don't we take a break, pay some bills? My name's John Paul. This is the Car Doctor program. You're listening to 95.9 WATD. Our phone number is 781-837-4900. We'll be right back right after these messages.
Car geeks and do-it-yourselfers rely on AAA to give them extra peace of mind on the road. AAA offers 24/7 roadside assistance, whether you're in your own vehicle, a friend's car, or even a rental. Combine that with great rates on insurance, hotel, gas, and dining savings, and discounts on 8,700 brands, and you're covered on and off the road. Get a special membership offer today at AAA.com/join. That's AAA.com/join.
Hey, it's John Shea here from Almost Famous Radio, introducing you to independent bands and musicians from across New England. Brought to you each week by Tiny & Sons Glass. Coming up this Tuesday night, another full show, tons of new music and upcoming show dates to pass along. And I'll be joined on the WATD Tiny Stage by Mackenzie Lee Clement. That's Almost Famous this Tuesday night, 8 till 10, 95.9 WATD and 95.9WATD.com.
Make an appointment Sunday morning at 11 for John Paul, the Car Doctor, on 95.9 WATD. Now, back to the Car Doctor.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor program. I was just looking at the Innova Scan Tool website, and I probably should have done this before I started, but there's some pretty interesting stuff in there, including they have a vehicle diagnostic artificial intelligence program where you can put in certain codes, and it kind of leads you to a path on what could possibly be wrong. And one of the I was just kind of comparing it to a question I got this morning. And it was somebody that had a BMW, and they had check engine light come on, and they kept coming up with a P0171 code, and they're like, what could that be? So in there, it was sort of you can look and see what's going to happen. So. Let's see what happens. And you can look at, how I can do certain things, and everything from, how do I jump start my car to, some other things. So there is some information there. So it is in its early stages, but something you should look at. Also, the other thing they have on their tool website is what kind of scanner I need. And so depending on what you do, you can look at it and say, hey, do I need this sort of scanner? How much detail do I need? Do I need to spend $500 or $600 on the Pro scanner? A variety of different things, and that makes it kind of interesting too. As I was answering questions this morning, and the questions in my column come up a lot of times from either questions I get on the radio show or people write to me, and sometimes it's the other way around. Some of the questions I answer here are similar to the ones that I get in the mail. So someone wrote to me today and says, I have an issue with my daughter's 2007 Volkswagen Jetta with the 2.5 liter engine. It has an automatic transmission and only has 96,000 miles on it. So not a lot of miles for a older car. The check engine light came on. Their mechanic said there was a leak in the evaporator system. Well, evaporative system is probably the right terminology. He also said he said to get a new gas cap from the dealer, which I did, and 20 minutes later the check engine light came on. The car runs fine. Any ideas? And the gas cap is one of the more common things because, and we'll get to this in a question a little bit later, because the gas cap can leak, it won't seal right, and the EVAP system, the evaporative emission systems, and what that means is the evaporative emission system keeps the fumes in the gas tank from escaping into the atmosphere and causing air pollution. So, if back in the old days, you'd see a car out in the hot sun and you'd see like almost vapor coming off of it, and that was the fuel actually evaporating from the gas tank. Well, they don't do that anymore. The fuel gets stored, it goes through a charcoal canister, it gets filtered, and when you start the car up, it sucks all the fumes out of the canister and reburns them, and that keeps the emissions levels low. The best method to evaluate and find a leak is to use something called a smoke machine. A smoke machine, I don't know who thought about this, but it's a pretty clever idea. Basically what it is, it's a machine that you hook up to somewhere in the car, and you pump in synthetic smoke. So I think the stuff is really baby oil, but you pump in the smoke and literally you just sit there and watch smoke leak out of places where it shouldn't leak out. So you could have a bidirectional scan tool, run the various evap system solenoids, and look for smoke to leak out. When you see the smoke leaking out, you're like, that's where the problem is. And so using a smoke machine works pretty well for that. And again, pretty simple idea. We'll pump the system full of smoke and see where it leaks out. I saw somebody try to make one out of a vape pen, because the vape pens make a lot of smoke, and they used some little pump, sort of did the same thing. I guess. I don't know. I suppose it could work. But yeah, the common issue is usually the canister purge valve on those. And yeah, the car will run fine because that valve doesn't affect the way the car will run. It's really only designed there to see if, to turn on and off, to take those emissions from the tank, take the vapor from the tank, and reburn it. This is a funny one, and I had to go looking for this one. This person wrote to me and said, I have seen many videos online where people take an arc welder, hook it up to a dead battery, and bring it back to life. And they said, does it really work? I don't know. I've never tried it. I've seen the videos too. That guy who does Project Farm, who tests a bunch of products, and I don't want to say he's not scientific, but he buys all his own stuff, and I have to respect him for that. He does some testing, and pretty accurate, I guess. But he tried it, and I suppose as long as all the plates, what can happen sometimes with a dead battery is batteries are made up out of plates that sit in electrolyte battery acid. And what can sometimes happen, the plates can literally fracture. And when that happens, all of a sudden now you'll have a cell that isn't connected to the rest of the 6 cells in a 12-volt battery. And so, hooking up an arc welder there isn't going to do anything. When you hook up that arc welder, I suppose what it does is it sends that high voltage, that arc welder voltage, through the battery, knocks off all the sulfate crystals that stick to the plates. And from watching the videos, you do it half a dozen times. You sort of, it's almost like giving it a jump start with a defibrillator, and it knocks all the sulfur crystals off, and then sort of makes the battery come back to life. And the one that I watched a couple of those videos, and the ones that I watched, they hooked up the battery, a battery that had maybe 100 cold cranking amps, didn't have a lot of life in it, and zapped it with the arc welder a couple times, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and then retested the battery, kind of let it cool down and retested the battery. And all of a sudden now it's 500, 600 cold cranking amps. So back to where it's supposed to be. First off, I kind of wonder who thought that was a good idea. Because I got to think, every once in a while you get one that's bad, and bad things could happen. I don't know that I would try it. And if I did try it, I'd want to do it behind, like, I don't know, a big wall of plexiglass or something, just in case something bad happened. And bad things, sparks and hydrogen gas are not a good idea. That's why I also believe in the best thing you can do is charge a battery on low. And I've heard people on the internet say, no, charge that battery. You want to smell the battery cooking. I don't think that's a good idea. Charge that battery low and slow, like cooking ribs on a smoker, I guess. Something I don't know anything about. But anyway, so I think a better thing to do would be take a battery charger that has a desulfation mode. I have a little battery tender type thing, only it's not battery tender. It's battery minder. And it actually has a desulfation mode. So it's a button you push, and what it does is it sends a bunch of high-frequency pulses through the battery to break down any of these lead sulfate crystals. I would rather do that because it's not whacking in 80 or 100 amps at a time through an arc welder. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there's a whole little cottage industry of people that can go in the battery rejuvenation business. Buy these, $10 core charge batteries or $20 core charge batteries and re-energize them. I don't know how long they last. In theory, they should last as long as they did the first time. Being in Florida right now, where it seems like every third person has a golf cart, and golf cart batteries go bad because for a variety of reasons. Who knows? Maybe you could have a whole little business if you go around to people with golf carts that need batteries and say, hey, rather than spend $100 each for 6 batteries and spend $600, I'll come to your house and for $150 I'll rejuvenate your batteries and get you another few years out of it. I don't know. Maybe there is a little business there that I don't know. Maybe there is. If you'd like to talk about, things other than rejuvenation, give us a call at 781-837-4900. Phone lines are open if you'd like to chat. Kind of in that whole gas cap story, this must be an awfully fussy repair shop. They went in to have their car inspected. I think it was in Massachusetts, and they said it almost failed because the gas cap strap was broken. The shop said they'd passed the car but wanted me to order a gas cap from the dealer. As far as I know, this has been the case for years. I guess the little strap's been broken for years. Do I really need to buy a $50 gas cap? I remember years ago I was at GM school and they were talking about gas caps with, you put the gas cap on and it clicks 3 times or whatever, and it had to have a leash on it because the leash was there. The EPA required the leash so the gas cap didn't fall off, hit the ground and crack and cause leaks. I think where OBD systems are so good at finding leaks now, that isn't a requirement anymore. But it's still not a bad idea to have it because, you don't want to drop your gas cap and have to go buy a $50 gas cap. Recently, I went to go put gas in my wife's Volkswagen, and the little leash broke. I went on Amazon or somewhere. For under $7, new little plastic leash, pried the old one off the gas cap, kind of wrapped the new one on there, it just kind of pushed over the top of the cap, little plastic pin that stuck in where the hinges, where the gas cap door, all fixed. So you don't have to buy a $50 gas cap. And the Audi Volkswagen one, it's the same one. So this person, I said, go online, buy a leash, take you 2 minutes to replace it, and you'll be good to go. Our phone number again is 781-837-4900, 781-837-4900. Let's talk to John in Melrose. John, good morning.
Good morning. The reason I'm calling, I'm listening to you talk about batteries and whatnot. I have a friend of mine, he's an elderly gentleman. He has, it may be a 2011 Honda hatchback. I think it's a CRV. Now he has a problem with the battery going dead all the time. And when he brings it in to get it analyzed or fixed, nobody can seem to find the problem. And sometimes you'll have the battery will go completely dead and replace the battery. A few days later, it's dead again. I mean, stone dead.
Well, that rules. I was going to say maybe it's he doesn't just drive the car enough, but if they put a brand new battery in it, that brand new battery should be good for a month. You know, if it's fully charged up and goes in the car, so that rules out that. So there's some sort of parasitic draw on that system. When even that car that is 15 years old now, that car has a bunch of computer stuff in it, and that computer stuff, that all those computer things are designed to kind of once you shut the car off, they're designed to go to sleep. So what a mechanic technician needs to do is they need to hook the car up to a voltmeter, and there's a variety of different ways you can do this. You can do this with a clamp-on amp meter that can read microamps really low. You can read voltage, but what you need to do is you need to trick the car into thinking all the doors are closed, the hood's closed. So what you have to do is you have to go around and you need to trip all the door latches, because that way the car thinks the doors are closed and you've gone away. And it might take anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours for the computers to go to sleep. So they're shut completely down. Then what you need to do is you need to take and you can start with taking a voltmeter and a digital volt ohm meter and measure each one of the fuses to see if there's current going through that fuse. And if there's current going through that fuse, you know that there's some system that's still staying on. And that could be
still drawing the juice.
Still drawing juice out of the battery. And in the old days when things were simpler, what we would do is we would just take the negative battery cable off, which it would hook a test light up to one end of the battery cable and a clamp up to the other side, and we'd look, and if the light was on, you knew that there was something drawing current through the battery, and you pull fuses one at a time, and you get to the fuse that the light went out, and you go, oh, it's the dome light fuse, so it's got to be the dome lights coming on. But now where there's so many different systems in the car, you got to be as tricky as the car is. So there's a whole little procedure to check for parasitic drain, and it could be. I've seen things like we were talking about emissions earlier. There's a pump in the gas tank that pressurizes the fuel system to look for leaks. I've seen that pump randomly come on Hondas. It could be that when the car changes temperature, all of a sudden the power door locks start to click for whatever reason, and that could be enough. But if it's killing a new battery after 3 days, it's a pretty good draw on the system. So I think that's going to be, if you said to me, oh, every year he has to buy a new battery because then it's a different story. Then it might not be he's just driving it enough. So I think at this point he needs to go into a shop, and they're going to need to spend a certain amount of time with it and try to look for what the parasitic draw is. And and unfortunately it can be a whole bunch of different stuff. There was one I was looking at recently for somebody on a Thunderbird, and the Thunderbird, to kind of be reminiscent of old cars, the taillights would flash sequentially. And what it was that module that made the taillights flash, that thing was staying on all the time, and that thing was drawing current, and every couple of days the battery would go dead, and the guy to fix it, all he'd do is he kept a battery charger on it all the time, and that didn't fix the problem because the battery would still, now all you're doing is overcharging the battery all the time. So I think this guy needs to go find a good shop and where they can spend some time. The problem is, like everything, time is money, and I don't know what in the Melrose area what shops are charging, but I bet they're charging somewhere between $150 and $200 an hour. So it's going to take some time.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
The other question on what you said, when you said disconnect the negative on the battery and hook a meter up to the cable and then to the terminal negative?
Yeah. And I wouldn't use a meter in that case. I'd use an actual test light, because what happens is that you're always going to see some current, or some voltage, because there's always something that, the memory for the radio stays on. So if you hooked up a digital voltmeter, it might read 12.5 volts, and that's going to fool you. But if you use an actual, like an old-fashioned test light, or even like I've seen people they take a headlight bulb and they hook it up, and if the headlight bulb, that's going to draw a couple of amps. So if that headlight bulb comes on, you can go, or even like a parking light bulb or something. If that bulb lights up, there's more than 50 milliamps getting drawn through that. So you don't want to be fooled by a meter in that case if you're going to try it that way. And kind of if you're going to try to help them out, you could give that a try. You could take just a regular 12-volt test light, disconnect the negative cable, hook the little alligator clip up to the battery post, stick the pointy end in the cable,
terminal.
and then if the light's on, there's some draw. But like I said, the thing you got to do is you got to fool the car into thinking everything's shut off. So you take a screwdriver and flip all the latches. And then you'll have to remember, before you go to close the door, you got to lift up the handle and flip the latches back the other way, or the doors are never going to close. But you could do that. You could do that, and let it sit start with a half an hour. Let it sit, and then see what happens. And if you go, oh, that light's on bright, start pulling some fuses. And maybe what you do is you pull the radio fuse, and the light goes out, and you're like, you know what? He never listens to the radio anyway. I'll just leave the fuse out.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks for the information.
All right.
I'm going to try that.
All right.
Seems like
Okay.
the simplest
All right.
thing I could do.
All right.
Thank
Let me know if you find anything. All right. Take care now. All right.
Bye now.
Our phone number, 781-837-4900, is how you get through and talk to us. Why don't we take another break, and when we come back, talk about the car that got me around today, and that was a pretty fancy vehicle, the Range Rover, and we'll talk about that when we come back. My name's John Paul. This is the Car Doctor program. You listen to 95.9 WATD.
Even car geeks and do-it-yourselfers rely on AAA to give them extra peace of mind on the road. AAA offers 24/7 roadside assistance, whether you're in your own vehicle, a friend's car, or even a rental. Combine that with great rates on insurance, hotel, gas, and dining savings, and discounts on 8,700 brands, and you're covered on and off the road. Get a special membership offer today at AAA.com/join. That's AAA.com/join.
Hey there, folks. It's Quinn Kelly reminding you to tune in Sunday night at 5 for the South Shore's first voice in sports talk radio, The Sports Exchange. Unmatched coverage of local high school action, as well as a relatable voice on all things Boston Pro Sports. We've got you covered live at 5 every Sunday night. Have a question for our host, missed last week's show, or just want to share a great sports story? You can find us on Twitter at SE on WATD. But remember, mark your calendar, folks, and we'll see you Sunday night at 5 for the Sports Exchange on 95.9 WATD.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor program. Let's start with the obvious. The Range Rover Sport Autobiography is the automotive equivalent of, I don't know, a cashmere tracksuit. It's very nice. It's luxurious, a little bit ostentatious, and not entirely sure if it's here to, relax or show off. It's the kind of car that really screams, "I've made it," which is why I guess they're very popular in Hollywood. But it does it in kind of a refined British accent. Priced north of $130,000. I think this one was $131,000, depending on how many extras you pick to personalize it. It's not for the faint of wallet, certainly. But you get what you get for the money is a deliciously indulgent ride. that straddles the line between rugged off-roader. This thing is, I mean, it can do some serious off-roading, but it's to me, it's more of a Beverly Hills cocktail cruiser. Go to the golf course with it. The exterior is it's elegant. There's no question. All the sharp lines and sculpted curves. It's like, it's like any British person in a perfectly tailored suit. It's kind of like James Bond, looking really good. Rugged yet polished. The autobiography trim ups the ante with, in our case, 23-inch alloy wheels. That these were black alloy, but they look like, you sent your butler out to kind of, make sure they're good and clean all the time and shiny. It's a tad oversized for tight parking, but yeah, let the valet park it. Don't worry about it. If you are, piloting the beast, parallel parking, yeah, it's more like docking a yacht. Something I've never done, but there is good visibility. The camera system could have been designed by Nikon. It is one of the clearest, crispest. There's not really a word. Most crisp images I've seen. The interior is just, leather-clad seats, heated, ventilated, massaging. Cabin smells like an old English, leather chair, like money well spent. Materials are top notch, wood trim that, it's country estate. It's just nice. The 13.1-inch touchscreen entertainment system is crisp, though it occasionally lags a bit. I found it a little bit slow, wireless and distracting. Wireless Apple CarPlay and a sound system that even me being tone deaf can appreciate. The digital driver display reminds you that this is the 21st century. Like I said, it can be distracting. On the road, the 4.4-liter V8 engine makes 523 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque. It's like a diesel. It's power that's smoother than a freight train. It's not a sprinter, but it's moving 3 tons. 0 to 60 happens in about 5 seconds, so it's fast. But it wafts along at a, it's like Jesse. Who's that bodybuilder that goes into the gyms all the time and, you remember? That pretends to be cleaning up and.
Oh, I was going to say, I think all of the bodybuilders go to the gym, but yeah, he's got like the beard.
Yeah.
Carries the really heavy mop. I don't remember his name. It's like,
but he's funny. And that's what this thing is. It's like it, it lets you think that, it's a graceful car, but it's really a bodybuilder underneath. The air suspension soaks up potholes. We took a ride in it. We went down, had to drop somebody off, and she kept saying how well she thought it rode from the rear seat. Can you go off-road? Yeah. There's Land Rover's terrain response wizardry, turns amateurs into pro off-road drivers. But are people taking a $130,000 SUV on the Rubicon Trail? I don't think so. I think the closest thing you'll get to nature in this thing is a gravel road down to polo tournaments. Fuel economy is, who cares? They're saying 19 miles per gallon. I don't think I was getting that. But who buys a Range Rover for thrift? Still, the Range Rover's badge, the swagger, the sheer presence of it, is it worth the smug grim when you wear pulling up to anywhere? Maybe if you can afford it. The Range Rover Sport autobiography isn't perfect, but is glorious and kind of a cheeky indulgence for those who can afford and don't care. I think, if you can afford it, go out and buy one. Pretty good car. Jesse, where are we going? Tom?
Tom in Weymouth.
Tom in Weymouth. Let's talk to Tom in Weymouth.
Hey, John, on the parasitic drain, right?
Yep.
So we know that there's always going to be some draw on these cars because of alarms and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you mentioned the car goes to sleep. So would you say that you really should lock your car? Let's say you're a privileged person and they have a garage. Would they be better to lock the car, or can they leave it unlocked? Is there any difference between
I have heard but not seen that I've been told if you don't lock some of these cars over time, and for instance, we have a Volkswagen. We leave it for 6 months, and I don't lock it because, well, it's a convertible. If you want to get in it, you're going to make a hole in the top. So why have somebody do that? And I've never had a problem, but I have heard that there are some cars that if you don't lock it, the systems don't fully go to sleep.
Mm.
So it is possible, although, like I said, I've never run into one of those. I have seen more cases where people with garages will, with push-button start, will leave the keys in the cup holder. And what will happen is they'll get out of the car, they'll close the door, keys are in the cup holder so they don't lose them, close the door, lock the garage, whatever they do, and then, 3 or 4 days later they go to start the car and it's dead. Well, what happens is when you walk up to some of these cars, and this Range Rover is one of them, when you walk up to this car, it recognizes the keys are there. And it starts to turn stuff on, like dome lights and,
right.
courtesy lights. So if you leave the keys in the cup holder, you shut the door, and the car's going, hey, I'm waiting to get shut off. When are you going to shut me off? And when are you going to take the keys away? So I always tell people, take your keys out of the car and put them, I haven't seen any that work more than, say, 7 or 8 feet away. But still, if you hang your keys on a hook, maybe right inside your kitchen door and your garage is right outside of that, maybe that's close enough where it keeps the car energized a little bit. So you're right. I mean, if you have a question, lock the car. Make sure you lock the car and see if that has any change in it. It shouldn't, but it might. How's that?
Right. No, it's a simple thing, but it just might, like you said about leaving the keys there with these,
Yep. Don't do it. Don't do it. Hey, that music means we got to go, but always a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Right.
All right. That music means that Jesse's ending his favorite show on Sunday mornings between 11 and 12. So until next week, make sure you wear your seatbelt, drive safely, be good to your car, and if you see an emergency vehicle by the side of the road, slow down or move over. It saves lives. Talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.